Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome today to this session of Bodhan, our online course on statutory and regulatory compliances for not-for-profits. I am Sharad Bhargav on behalf of Sathi Development Services. We welcome all those who have joined and those who are joining. So also now for just like for profits, there is a securities law for not for profits also. This securities laws for not for profits is a very new concept. It has just been born. So it's very important for not for profits to understand what the law is and see how your organization can also join the other not for profits in terms of raising registration and raising funds from the masses in a certain sense. So that is the reason why this topic is absolutely brand new under Bodhan. So this is the first session on of securities law for not for profits, and I can assure you that it's a very interesting topic. We will study the law around securities law. Okay, how do I get to register? How do I get to raise funds? Not exactly to raise funds. So as finance people and as people who are custodians of law in the organization, it's very important to know this new law that has come. So without further delay, let's begin the topic. Uh, this is this is what I call as democratization of social investment in the country. Okay, just as for profits, you are generally aware that for profits raise monies from the masses. Okay, we really don't know the company, we really don't know who's the promoter of that company in a certain sense, but we do subscribe to their shares or debentures, and that's how that company is able to raise monies from across the country. Okay, uh, so the idea behind the securities law and the social stock exchange for not for profits is exactly this by the government. Should the not for profits also consider raising monies from the masses or public at large? That is perfectly feasible, and that is actually being done. uh, Despite the fact that our law for securities for not for profits is hardly 2 3 years old, but people are realizing the potential of raising funds for their projects from the uh, through this securities law and through the social stock exchange. So it's very important to understand what this creature, the social stock exchange, is, and what is it that the law provides in terms of registration and listing for not for profits. What are the instruments that are available for not for profits to raise funds? And this topic is just very new for the government, for the NPOs, for the various regulatory bodies, that is the Securities and Exchange Board of India and the stock exchanges. So a lot of thinking is still going on and a lot of tweaking is still happening in terms of procedures as we are moving on. That you will see as we progress with the presentation. So the layout for this session is basically three topics that we'll cover. So what is the journey of securities law for not for profits in India? As I said, it has just been born. Can we take the first mover advantage? A lot of NPOs have taken the first mover advantage. They have benefited with the new first mover advantage, and they are being recognized for that. The second is, of course, the framework of the social stock exchange. So the securities law essentially revolves around the this stock exchange, and here we call the stock exchange as the social stock exchange. So here the framework that we will see is the framework that has been created by the Securities Exchange Board of India. In short, it's called SEBI, SEBI is the regulator for the capital markets in this country, just as you have Ministry of Home Affairs, just as you have other the MCAs for CSR, the Ministry of Home Affairs. Here, for the securities laws, the Securities and Exchange Board of India is the regulator, and the regulator has come out with certain regulations, amendments to existing regulations to bring the social stock exchange framework into existence in this country. Okay, so we will see what is this thing called the ICDR, the LODR, and the AIF regulations. The ICDR stands for Issue of Capital and Disclosure Requirements. The second one is the Listing and Disclosure and other disclosure requirements, and the third one is Alternate Investment Fund Regulations. We will see these, each of them, and that is actually the framework. So the framework is laid down by SEBI, and it is implemented or ensured that it is complied with by the respective stock exchanges. Okay, so the stock exchange as a medium for raising funds from north to south or east to west, which I call as democratization of social investment or social sector investment in this country, is becoming a reality. The third thing is social auditors and the social audit standards. So we will see that this new concept of bringing about accountability for use of funds is coming in, and you have social auditors as independent auditors who will validate whether this particular project has delivered, and you have various standards under which are called the SAS or the social audit standards for each of the activities that are permitted. So as you saw, the FCRA permits certain activities, the CSR law permits certain activities under Schedule 7. So here also, as far as social stock exchange is concerned, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, I'll call it SEBI, has laid down for what all activities these monies can be raised. And so for each of those activities, there is a standard or a social audit standard that has been formulated by the self-regulatory organization, the Institute of Social Auditors of India. And the institute is seeded, is actually created by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Okay, and the social auditor is the independent practitioner, just as under the ICAI, to certify or to issue independently the annual impact report. So this is something which brings a lot of credibility to the programs and work of our organization. It's not a headache. It's actually talking about your success to the outside world, because every money that people will want to put, just as in the for-profit enterprise, when they put money in shares, they are looking at appreciation. Here we are not looking at appreciation. So what is the value that comes in terms of social projects is the social outcome, and that social outcome is now getting quantified, not just quantified by the NPO, but then validated by a third person. So we will see that. Okay, now to begin with, the social stock exchange versus the stock exchange that we generally talk about. So a normal stock exchange is a market, it's a market. Now, this market is all online right now. There is no physical market like there used to be market for securities or for exchange of securities earlier, 20 years back. There is no stock exchange which is a physical stock exchange now. So the stock exchange is basically an online market in which securities are bought and sold. The securities can be shares, debentures, convertible, non-convertible, all those. The derivatives can be there. So I'm not getting into what are the securities that can be bought and sold, because our idea is on the social stock exchange. But to let you know that the stock exchange basically is a place where people who want to offer securities can offer securities, and people who want to buy securities can buy securities. Now, there has to be an understanding in terms of the difference between the stock exchange and the social stock exchange, because the social stock exchange gives social returns. It does not give any returns in terms of payback. in terms of return of principal, in terms of any interest. It promises social return, okay, through the project. Now, the social stock exchange is a market, okay, is again a market which allows registration and listing of securities of social enterprises. Now, I did not mention exchange of securities. I said registration of social enterprises. Now, the social enterprises can is the word that we will be studying because that is very peculiar in the securities law for not-for-profits. Social enterprise is nothing but either in a not-for-profit organization or a for-profit enterprise also, which we call it as an FPE. We will see both of them, but what I'm saying is combined. So can the for-profit enterprises also raise money for social projects? The answer is yes. Can the not-for-profits as development actors raise money? Very clearly, yes. Now, both of them put together are called social enterprises. It provides an alternative fundraising structure. So instead of having to go write proposals to individual to institutions or to other agencies, this is providing you an alternative fundraising structure. So this platform is available for you to make a project, bring that project to the public at large, get yourself registered, and you can also list your securities. Now, what are the securities that are possible in the social stock exchange is something that we will see. What is registration requirements, what are the listing requirements, what are the disclosure requirements is also something that we are going to see. But it's so interesting. It does not allow for exchange of securities. It allows only for listing of securities. It allows for registration, again within the broader concept of social enterprises, which includes both not-for-profit as well as FPEs, the for-profit enterprises. The registration is applicable only for the for-profit not-for-profit organizations. Registration is not required for for-profit enterprises. So we will see that. So basically, this is another avenue that is available to the public. Now, when we talk to organizations who have raised monies from social stock exchange, they tell us that we got monies from Northeast, we got monies from down South, where we didn't know that investor, but the investor saw our fundraising document, which was available on the stock exchange, on the social stock exchange, the final document. And based on the understanding of the project and the attractiveness of the project, our due diligence that the stock exchange has already done, which gives that kind of a confidence to the investor. This is what probably will bring funding avenues from the masses to the sector players, and that's what is called democratization. So when a for-profit enterprises issues shares, the shares are subscribed from across the country. The company may be listed, may be based out of Delhi, but then the shares are subscribed from everywhere, because that is the seamless way of communication that the social stock exchange provides. Now, the idea of the social stock exchange, okay, was to provide a regulated platform. Okay, so this is the most critical part. So please remember everything that we have done in this courses around regulation, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of regulation. Okay, if there is regulation and we are regulated, the trust and equity, or brand equity as we call it, of people to come forward, and if they want to contribute to the cause, they will come. Okay, so what I'm saying is this platform is a regulated platform. The social enterprises are not allowed to just come and list or register themselves. There is a proper due diligence process that, and a procedure that has to be followed. But once that platform is allowed by the stock exchange to the social enterprise, whether it's a for-profit or whether it's a not-for-profit, then the donor's confidence is not more on the social enterprise, but more on the stock exchange, which has done the due diligence. because that is what the social stock exchange is promising right now. Because the social stock exchange also needs to create credibility among donors. Here donors is what I mean is individual donors, institutional donors. Okay, that's what we are actually referring to. It facilitates funding and growth of social enterprises, very straightforward. It provides for an enabling mechanism to ensure robust standards of social impact and financial reporting. So, utilization of funds raised through the way the instrument issued to public at large, as well as the social impact report, which we just saw the social auditors who need to issue the social impact report. What is that report and when is it to be issued is something that we will see. So we are able to document and substantiate social impact of our project to the entire country. So you don't have to go to each donor or institution, but the institution can actually on the stock exchange see what has been the contribution or what has been the success in terms of social impact for that particular project. It's very, very, it gives you a different level of visibility in as far as investment is concerned. Financial reporting is very important in social stock exchange, and therefore that financial reporting is also validated by the stock exchange and gives confidence to the investor. The last, of course, is what I keep insisting again and again is the democratization for social sector funding in this country. Democratization means, can any individual like me and you come forward and subscribe to a with a limited amount of contribution? That is democracy, for the people, by the people, and of the people. So even with 1,000 rupees for this project, which is 1 crore or 2 crores or 5 crores, can I put that 1,000 rupees and still be party to this particular social enterprise or social project? The answer is yes. And that access can be is possible only through the social stock exchange. So you might say, well, I can go to that NPO and give 1,000 rupees and then get an ATG and things like that. But it's not feasible. Let me tell you, it's not feasible. What is feasible is this platform called the social stock exchange. Okay. So having now understood majorly what a social stock exchange is concerned, let's understand how the entire process of social stock exchange started. Okay. And again, I want to tell you the journey of the social stock exchange in India is just 2, 3 years old. The journey is very, very short. And despite this 2, 3 years old, there is a lot of anecdotal evidence in terms of regulators now wanting to tweak the process. They must have had a different understanding, but they are really coming down to the reality of at one point of time the minimum size of an application by an investor was 2 lakh rupees. Now it has been reduced just within 2 years, within 1.5 years, to 1,000 rupees. So even if I have 1,000 rupees in my pocket and I like this project, I read this project on the social stock exchange, I read their fundraising, document, and I feel that I should be contributing, you are welcome. That possibility is not there other than the social stock exchange. And this is what makes the social stock exchange the real platform for raising funds from the masses. So as far as the social stock exchange is concerned, this was a declaration that was announcement that was made in the budget of 1920. And that provided the regulatory framework. So there are other countries in the world, some maybe about 5 to 8 countries or 10 countries in the world who have social stock exchanges. So it's not that India came up with the social stock exchange for the first time. There is evidence of social stock exchange, but under regulatory framework, under a law, or just as we have CSR under a legal obligation, the social stock exchange was within regulatory framework, which gives a different level of confidence to everybody, not investors only, not donors. When I say investors, in our understanding, it means donors. So It's not investors, it's the regulators, it's the various players in the industry, in the social stock exchange, which get that confidence. Okay, if you have the regulatory framework, because everybody has to follow the regulatory framework. So that regulatory framework is giving that kind of visibility, that kind of confidence, that kind of clarity in terms of what needs to be done. Now, standardization of procedures in the social sector. So what I mean by that is that the social stock exchange will ensure that in this social sector where there is no standardization, everybody is allowed. Only standardization now is coming into existence, and that is pinching us. Earlier, there were no standardization of procedures. You didn't have books of accounts, no problem. You had books of accounts, you had books of accounts in a certain fashion, no problem. But now everywhere the standardization is coming. So when you have a regulatory framework, the standardization of procedures is ensured, and in the social sector, that standardization is being accounted for by the social stock exchange. Now the social stock exchange is open to both not-for-profit as well as for-profit organizations if they are eligible as per the regulations. Okay, so the regulations lay down who is eligible as a not-for-profit and as a for-profit enterprise. So if there is a for-profit enterprise which has been set up as a for-profit entity, can it raise funds through the social stock exchange? The answer is yes. So but there are certain entities which have been prohibited from raising funds from the social stock exchange, as we will see. So the Securities and Exchange Board of India, and if you are interested, you can look at the LODR, the ICDR, and the AIF regulations in detail. But I'll not teach you these regulations in terms of regulation number 123 or 292 or whatever, wherever there is a change in the regulation, but in terms of the provision, because that's more important for you. So as far as the framework of social stock exchange is concerned, there was a working group way back in 2019. Then in 2020, there was this technical group which formalized the social stock exchange. And SEBI came out with the amendment in the various regulations in 2022. Okay. So uh, uh, these technical groups and this working group was made the responsibility of SEBI. Okay. So in July 2022 was the changes that the technical group suggested, and those changes were included in the issue of capital and disclosure regulation. Okay, chapter 10A, issue of the listing obligation and disclosure requirements regulations in chapter 9A, and the SEBI AIF regulations, the changes were made. So basically, changes were made just less than 3 years back. And then there have been changes that have been made in these regulations as we have evolved. So even in the last 3 years, and more specifically, I can tell you only in the last 2 years. So issue of capital has happened by not-for-profits only. Let me tell you, the for-profit enterprises have still not raised money from social stock exchange. But a lot of money has been raised by the not-for-profit organizations, as we will see. Okay, and a lot of registration has happened by not-for-profit organization. So they are looking at a very major opportunity which can be long term. Okay, so there's no restriction in terms of how many projects you can come up with for purposes of raising money. When you want to come up with a project, there is no such restriction. Okay, so what has happened is that these regulations lay down the entire procedure. And if you see July 22, and we are not even July 25, it's less than 3 years. And actually, after July 22, there were changes in December 22. So effectively in 2023 is when, mid 2023 or less than about 2 years back is when the activation of the social stock exchange actually happened. Okay. Now, as far as the current status of not-for-profit, I'm talking about the not-for-profit participation in the social stock exchange. So let us understand that as far as social stock exchanges are concerned, there are only two social stock exchanges in this country. One is the social stock exchange set up by the National Stock Exchange, the NSE, and the second one is the social stock exchange that has been set up by the Bombay Stock Exchange. Okay. So here you are seeing the statistics of NPO participation in social stocks in both these stock exchanges. Okay, the NSE and the BSE, the SSE platform of NSE and BSE more precisely. And I told you not-for-profit organizations have to register before they can raise capital. So they have to register and they can raise capital. So both those situations have to be followed by not-for-profit organizations. Now, as far as registration of NPOs are concerned, you can see the data. On the National Stock Exchange, 87 NPOs have registered, and there are about 40 to 50 NGO applications that are pending. Please remember, even registration of not-for-profit organization on the National Stock Exchange is not straightforward. It's a due diligence process. So a lot of donors are now realizing and saying that if you are registered on the social stock exchange, we may not do the same kind of due diligence because that due diligence has been done by the National Stock Exchange. Now, between the two stock exchange, this SSC platform of National Stock Exchange is more popular, okay, compared to the Bombay Stock Exchange. As you can see, the BSE has just 25 registered entities, whereas NSE has 87, and I'm told that this will actually become about 150 in the next 6 months. So 150 NPOs have considered that there is an opportunity and they have decided to register. Now, in terms of listing of NPOs, listing means listing of the securities that you have issued. So you are an issuer and you have issued securities and you are now you have listed your securities. As far as NSE is concerned, approximately 41 crores has been raised by 18 NPOs through their fundraising documents. 13 NPOs have submitted draft fund raising documents which are under approval, under public comment, and in principle approval by the stock exchange. So it's not a small amount of money, 41 crores in the last about nearly 1.5, 2 years or less than that. And especially given the fact that we are so new as far as stock exchange is concerned. Here also the NSE is better placed in terms of uh, listing and raising of capital. Whereas as far as the stock exchange, the BSE is concerned, there are only 3.5 crores that has been raised by 2 NPOs. 6 NPOs draft funding proposals are lined up for final, documents so that they can go to the market and raise monies. So you can see that. So the 18 NPOs are out of the 87 NPOs. So there are a lot of NPOs who have just registered and are looking for an opportunity to raise money. But the 18 NPOs that have raised money, the biggest uh, issue of securities is about 18 crores, 18 crores, single issue of securities. Okay. Uh, so what I'm saying is that, and there are many of them which have raised 85 lakhs or just about a crore. They want to touch the market. They want to understand the dynamics. They want to test the waters and see what this gives to them in the long term. Okay. So as far as the for-profit enterprises are concerned, they have not listed until now. So the profit for-profit entities or the for-profit companies have still not come to the social stock exchange as the not-for-profit organization. So this data is also very important to understand that this concept is picking up for the not-for-profit organization. Now I come to the regulations, actually the framework for the social stock exchange. Okay, and we will see, and this is an important part because this actually gives us an understanding of uh, where we are, what we need to do, how does it look like. So the first thing is the issue of capital, okay, and disclosure regulation. So this is related to issue of capital, okay. We want to issue capital and what is needs to be done. So those regulations that were brought in place in 2022, the ICDR was amended in 2022, and the provisions of the ICDR, which you should need to know, is what I'm actually putting out to you. So the ICDR said that SSE or the Social Stock Exchange will be notified. Now, this will be a separate segment on a recognized stock exchange, and an RSE is the recognized stock exchange. So, a recognized stock exchange by SEBI. So, it will be a separate segment. So, on the NSE, SSE is just like any other platform. It's a separate platform. You have the main board on the stock exchange. You have the MSME segment. So also you have the SSE segment on the recognized stock exchange. But it was said that it will have nationwide trading. Okay, nationwide trading. So in this country, as far as nationwide trading is concerned, there are only two stock exchanges, and therefore the SSE is set up by NSE and BSE, that is the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange. Okay, for registration of NPOs and listing of securities by social enterprises. Okay, so the social enterprises is includes both the not for profit as well as for the for profit entities. But I mentioned registration of NPOs, but I didn't write listing of securities by NPOs. Listing of registration of NPOs, not the for profit enterprises, no registration is required. But for listing of securities, both it's applicable for both the not for profit and for the for profit entities. Now, so the National Stock Exchange and the BSE data we have seen on the social stock exchange, and clearly the National Stock Exchange is doing much more in terms of popularizing their social stock exchange platform to the not-for-profit sector as an avenue for raising capital, social capital. Now, the SSE is the securities from the on the NSE on the social stock exchange can be subscribed by institutions, by bigger investors called non-institutions, and retail investors. Initially, they were not available for retail investors, but then later on, the government realized that it should be made available for retail investors. Okay, so most categories, and these have to be Indian institutions, non-institutions, and retail investors. Foreigners are not allowed at this stage to enter the social stock exchange. The exclusion for the social stock exchange. So who cannot come to the social stock exchange? Please remember corporate foundations. So if a company has set up a Section 8 company or a trust or a society, that is not eligible for raising capital from the social stock exchange. So that is an exclusion very clearly. So if there is a foundation, so probably the government is saying, well, we don't want you to be creating entities and doing social impact work. We want third party or third independent entities to do social work at the ground. So corporate foundations, meaning trust or a society or a Section 8 company which has been set up by a corporate, will not be eligible for raising capital or registration on the social stock exchange. Political or religious organizations or activities. So you will not be able to fund any religious activities through the social stock exchange. Okay. Uh, Professional or trade associations, they will not be there, and infrastructure and housing companies, except low cost housing, they are not eligible. So these are the category of entities who may be profitable, maybe for profit or not for profit. Both of them are not, these are not allowed to come to the social stock exchange. So the government actually is trying to say, well, we are looking at very grassroots or organizations which are really doing social work. That is what we want to promote and take to the masses as far as funding is concerned. So that is the intent with which the government is actually working. Now, so eligibility for accessing the social stock exchange, both for the not-for-profit and the for-profit enterprises. Okay. Now, there is something called, please remember, there's something called primacy of social intent. Okay. And this is very important. So the primacy of social intent is on the next slide. But primacy of social intent has to be demonstrated. Only then you can register on the stock exchange and come out with your securities to list. And the primacy of social intent has been laid down by the Securities and Exchange Board in the ICDR. Now, what is primacy of social intent? We will see. But this is the primary factor which will decide whether you can come inside the social stock exchange or not. Now, what is the definition of primacy of social intent? We will see. Both are called social enterprises, as I have already said. So the inclusion or the eligibility is for profit enterprises and for not for profit enterprises both. Please remember that. And they are all called under one umbrella, social enterprises. Now, the primacy of social intent has to be demonstrated or proven for registration also. If you are not able to provide primacy of social intent, so for instance, you are an organization which is into real religious activities, not falling within the primacy of social intent. Now, what is the eligibility condition for a not-for-profit enterprises to come onto this for registration on the social stock exchange? It should be a trust, a society, or a Section 8 company. So that's standard if you want to do social development work in this country. What are the governance documents? So your memorandum and your rules and regulations. You have a valid 12A and ATG for the next 12 months. So for the next 12 months, you must have a valid registration both under 12A and an ATG approval. Both are required, just like under CSR. They'll need your PAN. There's another thing which is called spending of rupees 50 lakhs on, various activities, and funding of rupees 10 lakhs in the previous financial year based on your audited report. Now, these are not something which is difficult. This is something which is, very simple for even smaller not-for-profit organizations. For the for-profit entities is as per the current LODR regulations in terms of eligibility. So they are normal for-profit entities which will be, when they list, they will have to follow the LODR because there's nothing like a registration. Now, coming to primacy of social intent, this is the most critical part as far as the social stock exchange is concerned. Now, how do you demonstrate primacy of social intent? Three things that have to be seen. One is that you are undertaking one of the 16 activities which are laid down in Annexure A to the ICDR. Now, 16 activities, actually sometimes called 17 because the 17 says other activities which may be provided. So I have mentioned 16. Now, these 16 activities we will see in the next slide. Broadly, the same kind of activities that are in line with the SDGs, okay, the Sustainability Development Goals that we need to reach by 2030. So the 16 activities will more or less cover the activities that we are doing. It must target underserved population. So the organization will have to prove the primacy of social intent by saying we are working with underserved population. So basically your target audience or your target population needs to be clearly known to them to say that, well, it is the underserved population is what is being targeted. And they will want to understand that. The third thing which is very important is that 67% of the activities is for the target population on one of the three parameters. That is 67% of your income should be for the vulnerable or underserved target population. 67% of your expenditure, the point is or. So it could be income that has been, that you have mobilized is for underserved population, or the expenditure is for underserved population, or the customer base 67% is the target population. So they are not saying all 100% should be the underserved population. The underserved population may 2/3 of the income or expenditure or the customers should be to the underserved target population. Now, this data for income, expenditure, and customer base is based on an average of 3 years, preceding 3 years average. So that is also something which is good, because you can have 3 years average which will mm, help in terms of demonstrating that. Some cases you might not have, some years you may not have, some years you may have. So the average principle is what is being provided. Now this is the primacy of social intent. One, that you should be undertaking one of the 16 activities which are permitted under the regulations. You must be targeting vulnerable population. And third is that 67% of either your income or your expenditure or your customer base is directed towards that underserved population, to be validated based on the average of the last 3 years. So this is the thing that you will have to prove when you apply for registration. So a lot of work will have to be done, and back and forth will have to happen to prove the primacy of social. Oh, sorry, my 17 activities is something uh, that is not visible. So I'll do that. Don't worry. Let's continue. Now, as far as registrations are concerned, okay. So now I'm actually talking about the meat of this presentation in terms of registration and listing. Okay, fundraising. This is the slide. I will show you the 17 activities. Not very great, but I don't want to take off the presentation right now. So I'll take it off and redo that. But it all covers all the various goals under SDG, whether it's hunger, poverty, whether it is women empowerment, whether it is gender, whether it is environment, all those things that we have seen in Schedule 7 and we have seen in 215 is more or less in line actually. But every uh, regulator has to lay down an outer limit or an outer kind of a set of activities that can be permitted, and that is the reason why even in the social stock exchange there are those 17 activities which you should have been doing, which to prove this primacy of social intent. Now, as far as registration is concerned, I said it's not mandatory for-profit enterprises. FPE, what I have written is for-profit enterprises. But for NGOs or NPOs who are Section 8 trust society, not formed by a corporate foundation, they are all required to register first. So there is a checklist to complete. Okay, you will have to create a login credential on a separate portal which I have mentioned here, neeps.necindia.com. This is the portal for submitting your registration. If you go to the SSE platform of the NSE, it's not visible. So you'll say, how do I submit my application? So you will have to go and create login credentials, and you will have to fill a checklist. There is enough documentation that has to be provided, not only in terms of governance, not only in terms of your organization, in terms of your board, but also in terms of your primacy of social intent. Now, there will be queries that the stock exchange, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks or even more for your application to be considered, with queries coming and then you are answering. Once you are approved, then there will be an agreement with the social stock exchange, okay, as a registered entity. Now you are registered. What does registration mean? That you are now registered on the social stock exchange and you can raise capital. Can you raise capital directly as an NPO from the social stock exchange? No. First, you will have to go for registration. Now, the validity of the registration is 1 year and the registration fee is nothing, 5,000 rupees. This 1 year is probably being increased to 2 years. And so after 1 year, you might have to go in for renewal, which is not a very difficult process because you will have already submitted all the documents. Uh, Registration does not mean that funds have to be raised through the social stock exchange. What this means is, if you are registered, the social stock exchange will not say that you please list. So you can continue to be registered on the social stock exchange without raising funds. But you can get funds as a registered entity without coming out with a public issue through the alternative investment funds that we will see. They can subscribe to the private placement of your securities as a registered entity. But if you are a registered entity, do you need, will it be mandatory that you after 6 months you have to raise capital? The answer is no. Absolutely no. The second one is fundraising. So this is as far as registration is concerned. Now, what is the provision for not-for-profits? Currently, there are, for purposes of listing or raising of securities, only one instrument is available. Uh, one, which is what is called as the zero coupon, zero principal instrument. Okay. Now, this is called the ZCZP instrument. It's called the ZCZP. And whenever I will be talking about ZCZP, it is nothing but the zero coupon, zero principal instrument. Basically, it's a donation receipt. It is a donation receipt. Zero coupon means there is no interest on this so-called donation. Zero principal means there is no principal amount of repayment in this instrument. So what it is, it's just a hollow donation receipt, but we have given it the shape of an instrument, and that instrument will be listed on the social stock exchange, but it will not be traded. Okay, so you will get a ZCZP in your account, and you will see that how many ZCZP have been issued to you by the issuer, and that ZCZP is listed on the social stock exchange. Now, listed means, will it be traded? The answer is no, but it is listed. Now, the minimum issue size is 50 lakhs. Okay, so whenever you want to raise capital through the social stock exchange, you will have to come up with a minimum public issue of 50 lakh rupees of ZCZP. You will have to ensure 75% subscription of the amount that you have raised. 75 subscription means if you have come out with a public issue of 100 lakhs, then you must get 75% subscription. If you do not, then the issue fails. So 75% means 75 lakhs, and 75 lakhs, more than 75 lakhs if you get, but not 100 lakhs, then you can also reduce the size of your project in consultation with the social stock exchange. So the issue will not fail. The money will not have to be refunded. Application size minimum now is rupees 1000. This was only changed in March of 2025. Earlier, this amount was 2 lakhs and then brought down to 10,000. Now it is 1,000. Because the retail investors have been now permitted to also access the social stock exchange, which was not the case earlier. Earlier, it was meant only for institutions and non-institutions, the bigger players. Now, the security is in demat form. Okay, dematerialization. So if people are working in the stock exchange, you will see that your shares or your bonds or your mutual funds are in dematerialization mode by your demat agency, and the two depositories which govern the dematerialization process is the national NSDL, the National Securities Depositories Limited, and the Central Depository Services Limited, CDSL. Both of them are also working in the social stock exchange for ensuring that the instruments are issued, the ZCZP is issued only in demat mode. It is eligible for ATG benefit, which was not the case earlier. So you will get ATG benefit now on the subscription that you will make to ZCZP. There is also a discussion happening that the ATG benefit may, instead of being 50%, should be made 100% if you are subscribing to ZCZP or such instruments through the social stock exchange, just to promote the social stock exchange. Okay, the face value generally of ZCZP is 1 rupees. Okay, normally it can be 10 also. Now what happens is that once you have issued the securities and the securities are listed on the social stock exchange, then you will have to comply with utilization and other requirements in terms of disclosure. And at the end of the project, which will be specified in the fundraising document, this particular ZCZP will be delisted by the NPO once the object is achieved for the project or the project period has completed. So if you see fundraising document, It will mention our project is for a period of 15 months or 18 months or 36 months. After 36 months, this ZCZP vanishes or ceases to exist and will be removed from the demat account of your from your demat account. Now the other, so this is the ZCZP, which is probably today the only instrument that is being used. This 41 crores that I talked about is through the ZCZP instrument. Now the ZCZP instrument, if you have understood clearly, is a donation receipt. But the donation receipt is basically through the social stock exchange. So anybody can go to the social stock exchange and get a ZCZP, subscribe to the ZCZP, irrespective of whether you are actually known or you have been approached by the NPO or not. So this is the kind of visibility that is possible through the social stock exchange for your project and for your securities. That's why we are doing securities law. This is the only law relating to securities for the not-for-profits. Now, for the for-profit enterprises, they can, as they do, they can raise equity, they can raise debt on the main board, they can raise it on the MSME, on the the income growth platform. There are other platforms also. Now, as far as the fundraising is concerned, so we have seen what is the instrument that is available to us. But what about the fundraising document? So the fundraising document is the document which is declaring that we are coming out with a public issue of ZCZP. Now, this has to be filed with SEBI and with the stock exchanges. Okay. Primarily with the stock exchanges, it will give details of what is the vision, what is the target segment, what is the strategy, governance, management, the finances for the last 3 years, operations, compliance, credibility, social impact report, and of course, the project itself. What is the purpose for which you are coming out with the ZCZP? So basically, the purpose is to get monies for our project. We want to set up a hospital. We want to set up these number of beds. We want to train so many of these frontline functionaries. We want to train them on some kind of specialized skill. We want to implement a project. Nothing wrong about it. Okay. So if you go to the SSE platform of the social stock exchange, mostly the national stock exchange, you will have a tab where the fundraising documents, both final fundraising document as well as draft fundraising documents are available. I think you must see one of them at least, okay? And you will then get to understand how is the transparency, visibility, accountability ensured in terms of raising social capital. That's where the government is actually putting its money. The government is saying, well, we want you to raise money for social projects, but it should be on the enterprise model. It just doesn't have to be this has been done and the chapter is over. Something that we have been used to for 100 years or 50 years of whatever work we have been doing. That orientation has to change is what probably we'll have to look at. Once you read the draft or the final funded raising document, you will understand what is the kind of thought process that is now going on as far as raising social capital is concerned. Now, once you have made, you are registered, of course. Please remember, you have to be registered before you can go in for listing or before you can make or submit a draft fundraising document. So the fundraising document will be a draft document and that will be put up for public comments for 21 days on the website of the concerned stock exchange where it is being listed. Most organizations recently are preferring to list it on the national stock exchange. So after 21 days, whatever comments will come, those comments will have to be incorporated and the final document will be given in principle approval by the social stock exchange. So the social stock exchange will say, well, this is in principle approval given for now opening the public issue of ZCZP. Okay. Up till now, we have understood. I am not talking of any regulation number. I am talking of, suppose you were sitting on your desk, what will you have to do both for registration as well as for your listing of securities? Now you have the draft fundraise document, which where the comments have been incorporated. The social stock exchange has given in principle approval, which means that that is now a final fundraising document and you can launch the fund, launch the public issue. You can launch or open the public issue for subscription of ZCZP. Now you have a period, the validity period of in principle approval from the day it's been communicated is 6 months. Okay. Uh, this is a very long period of time. Okay. 6 months is very long. So you can do your soft fundraising or your road shows or your touching the bigger investors through whom you can at least ensure that 75% of your public issue will come. Okay, or do your own ways of ensuring that the you can do that soft activity during that period of 6 months, because you have such a long time of 6 months to open your public issue from the date that you get in principle approval. So the stock exchange has said we will give 6 months time, enough 6 months time to the NPO, because we want the NPO to do all its homework to get the subscription of 75% and not fail. That is why we will give them 6 months time. That is a huge period of time to approach investors, to do your strategy in terms of how you will raise the money. Now, so, you can get soft commitments. You can approach people. So then you can at least have soft commitment before you open the public issue. Now, the public issue of ZCZP, currently ZCZP, zero coupon, zero principal bonds or instruments, minimum 3 days and maximum 10 days. Okay. Minimum 3 days and maximum 10 days, including the 3 days. Okay. So 10 days. And on case by case basis, the stock exchange can extend it by 10 days also. But the total period of subscription cannot be more than 20 days in any case. In 20 days, if you get 75% in your escrow account, in your bank, then your issue is successful. If you are not able to, then it's not successful. So there are many other players besides the social stock exchange and you. One of them is called the advisors. So basically the advisor is the manager of your ZCZP, because you cannot do that. Just as you have a statutory auditor for your accounts. Similarly, for your public issue of ZCZP, you have an advisor. You have a registrar and transfer agents, all the DMAT work, all the work relating to ensuring that the securities are credited to the DMAT account of the investors. They are vanishing from the DMAT account after close of the project. All that is something that the RTA does. The bank is the place where the money gets collected. So you don't have to collect the money. Earlier there was physical, there is physical still, but everything is online now in terms of an escrow account, ESCROW. An escrow account means that on a continuous basis, money can be deposited and this escrow account cannot be utilized, or money cannot be withdrawn from escrow account because there's a lien on the escrow account. What is the reason for the lien? 75% subscription. The moment the RTA is able and the banks are able to tell the social stock exchange, well, 75% money is come. The money from the escrow account in the bank goes to the account of the normal account of the NPO. And the NPO can get the money, gets the money and can start implementing the project for which the money has been raised. Okay. So the fundraising cost is about 5% of the total raise. Is something that I'm telling you is a kind of a average, and the stock exchange allows you to include that fundraising cost as part of the project cost. So if your 100 rupees was your 100 lakhs was your project, then 5% you can say 5% will be my cost of raising funds, and you will get a amount of 105 lakhs which you can mobilize. Okay. Uh, there is no listing fee by the National Stock Exchange presently. So except for 1,000 rupees. There is no fees that the social stock exchange right now is charging. Why? Because they want to promote the social stock exchange. CSR funds cannot be invested in ZCZP, although there is this discussion happening. So the corporates can, but corporates under their CSR allocation cannot subscribe to ZCZPs. Although there is a discussion that the government should allow 5% of the CSR allocation, up to 5% of the CSR allocation can be used for subscription of ZCZP from the CSR allocation. This is being discussed, but at this stage, not a reality. Now, if this happens 5%, so remember we were talking of CSR monies being in the order of about 30,000 crores. Just imagine 5% of 30,000 crores. If it can come to ZCZP or similar instruments, then it will be a game changer for the sector, because the corporates are more interested in the social impact, in a more disciplined way of program implementation, in more transparency. The money will come, so they will get an avenue where they have to struggle to get good partners. They will have this avenue through which they can invest their or spend their CSR amount without any problem. So you see the kind of possibility that it is getting thrown up, and it's highly likely that some percentage, up to 5% is what I understand is being discussed, is something that will come. 5% of 30,000 crores is what you understand this. 1,500 crores of CSR money can will be permitted to be channelized on an annual basis through instruments on the social stock exchange. It will be a total different understanding of the social stock exchange. Now, as I said, largest issue has been 18 crores, and there were about 200 retail investors participated. And that companies, NPO said, we got retail investors from places where we didn't even know them, where we had no idea of them. So it's so early and so premature right now, but the possibility is immense. This is what I can say. Now I want to, so we have seen that the ZCZP as an instrument. Now the government is also talking of another instrument. So now it's not that ZCZP will be the only instrument through which NPOs will raise monies. No, there is a discussion that is at advanced stage happening for another instrument, which is called the Development Impact Bond. All of you must know that. Nobody will teach you. So the DIB is another instrument that is being considered as an addition to the ZCZP. Now, NPOs, as I had said, can also raise monies through mutual funds. Did I say that? Point number 2 here, donation through MF schemes. But this is not very popular. So the mutual fund can float a scheme which is for cancer, for environment, for monument. Okay, there have been some such schemes. HDFC floated a scheme for awareness and prevention of cancer as a routine mutual fund scheme, and they got money, and that money can go as donation to the not for profits. But it is not very common because it's difficult. There the mutual fund schemes will actually ask for money. Now, as far as development impact bonds are concerned, these are also something which is impact driven. It has to prove that the impact is happening, and that impact will happen, then only the money is that this instrument will work. So there are three players in the development impact bond. Before that, let me show this. This will give you a better the DIB workflow. Now, DIB is still not a security on the social stock exchange. Let me tell you, but it is in the final stage of coming. The DIBs have been issued in this country. So Palladium, Educate Girls, they have used this instrument. Now there are 4 players in DIB. We are talking of development projects. Okay, I'm not talking of anything which is not out, which is out of course. This is purely within our course. It gives you a different understanding of the way people are looking at development work. It's all impact driven. It's not process driven now. Gone are the days when it used to be process driven. I did this process. What happened finally, God alone knows, doesn't matter. That thing is now over, actually. Now, what happens is that, please remember, there are four boxes here, and I'll just explain to you what each of these boxes means. So then you will be able to understand the instrument very easily. Ho sakta hai, by the end of this year, DIB becomes an instrument as far as raising capital from the social stock exchange is concerned. Now, the first one is called a private investor. Okay, this is someone called the risk investor. This is also called as the risk investor. This is a for profit entity. This is a pure commercial entity, but they want to support a social sector project. So it's a risk fund that they are putting in. This private investor is putting in risk capital, but risk means returns also. So if it's putting risk capital, they will ask for something in addition to the risk capital if the project has succeeded. So that's called the risk funder or the private investor, whatever you may call it. They will put the money in the project first. Then when I mention service provider, this is nothing but the NGO, the NPO who's implementing the project. So they will invest the required capital in the NPO, and the NPO, this risk funder, and the third one on the left hand side is the outcome funder with orange. Outcome funder means that I will fund you if the outcome is achieved. If the outcome is not achieved, then the private or the risk funder will lose the capital. But if the private funder or the risk funder invests in the NPO, the black box, and through an arrangement where there is an evaluation agency, that the one on the right hand side, it's called the independent evaluator. So who will decide whether the project has succeeded or to achieve the outcome or impact? The independent evaluator, something like a social auditor. They will decide at the end of the project, the money has been spent, whatever outcomes, outputs, or whatever milestones were to be achieved in terms of quantitative or qualitative both have been achieved or not. If they are achieved, the outcome funder, who is going to pay only if the evaluation agency is saying that the outcome is achieved, will pay not only the principal amount of money that the risk funder has invested in the NGO, but will also pay a premium. So say, for instance, the private investor, whom I call the risk funder, has invested 100 rupees. Now, when the arrangement for a DIB, and they will, they will be issued with a deep development impact bond by the NGO, and the development impact bond will be sold to the outcome funder with a premium. So 100 rupees of development impact bond, the private investor says, I'm taking risk, because if the outcome is not achieved, I'll lose 100 rupees. But if the outcome is achieved, then from the outcome funder, or who's an outcome funder? That philanthropic organization which wants to give the money for philanthropy, but doesn't want to give it just like that. They want that my money, and an Azim Premji Foundation, or anybody for that matter, who wants to give money, but wants to give money only after ascertaining that the outcome has been received. So the private or the risk funder will say, I will like to get a premium on 100 rupees of say 15%. So the outcome funder will pay to the risk funder, instead of 100 rupees, which the risk funder had invested, 115 rupees, and not 100 rupees, 115. But the outcome funder will say, well, it is good. At least I'm funding a project only after ascertaining that the outcome has been achieved or not. This is the concept of development impact bond or development impact instrument. So you have four players and they all agree to a certain arrangement for this development impact instrument to work. I hope I've been able to clarify as to what this is. You'll have to read it again and again. It's not as some people who have understanding of equity and debt and things like that, or have commercial orientation, will understand it very quickly. Here we have four players. One, an independent evaluator. The NGO is getting the money and implementing project, a risk funder and an outcome funder. They are two different people. The outcome funder is the one who wants to give charitable money or development money. It could be an institution, it could be even a corporate, okay? It could be anybody. But the outcome funder says that I will give the fund along with a premium, along with a plus 100 plus 15%, provided I am able to, provided the independent evaluator is able to say that the money that was put on 100 rupees has achieved the impact or not, the development impact or not. So this is the workflow. Now I want to just have a look at it. So besides ZCZP, SEBI is considering introducing the DIB in the social stock exchange. Okay, this is what is called as outcome based funding. Please remember, the DIB is called outcome based funding. It's basically a risk bearing instrument. It has been tried in India, let me tell you, not through the social stock exchange, but otherwise for social impact projects. It has been tried, also tried in government. And I think the MP government said that if DIB is issued, then is made an instrument, then we will like to be outcome funders as government, but we will fund only when the outcome has been achieved. So you can understand the kind of, the kind of, opportunity that these instruments will throw. Why government will come for development impact bond? Because they want to be outcome funder. They want to be a funder. They have to spend the money. But I don't want to be just a funder. I want to be an outcome funder. I want somebody else to take the risk, but I will pay a premium for that risk. But I want to be sure so that nobody can say, well, the money went down the drain. So you have the entire other thing is something that I have mentioned is what you can read. Basically, you have a private investor who wants to take a risk. It's a for-profit entity because they want to take a risk. But for the risk, they want a premium. Okay. So every private investor or private institution, whenever it wants to earn more money, it will have to take more risk. And the outcome funder is the philanthropic organization, the institution basically who wants to give money, but now doesn't want to be just a funder. They want to be an outcome funder. So the quantifiable metrics, का मतलब होता है basically the evaluation criteria. Okay, uh, to measure the project success, because only when the project will succeed as agreed at the time of conception of the project will the outcome funder give the money to the risk funder, and that is the risk bearing. That is why it's a risk bearing instrument. It's an outcome based funding. No outcome, no funding. You lose your money. Okay. At the end of the fixed term, you can read this. The evaluator will actually evaluate, and then it will be decided whether the project has succeeded or not. If the project has succeeded, the outcome funder will repay the principal plus the premium. In our case, we saw 100 rupees and 15 rupees. Now, please remember, this is completely a for profit oriented instrument. It's a risk bearing, risk return instrument. So you can also think the how the landscape for social capital in this country is changing, and you will have this quickly in the next 5 years. I am teaching you today, but in the next 5 years you will see all this as a reality, and people will be doing this routinely, and they will not fund anything which is process driven at all. They will say we have enough avenues. Currently they don't have avenues for outcome based instruments, But once they get outcome-based instruments opportunity, the process-based funding will stop. Now moving on to the uh, LODR. So we have done ICDR right now. Okay. Now the LODR basically means listing obligation. Once you are listed, okay. Now as far as the LODR is concerned, the reporting requirement, the disclosure requirement is both for registration as well as for listing. Okay. For profit enterprises, there is no registration. Now we are seeing if you are registered, what is your annual disclosure to the social stock exchange? So you have to do an annual disclosure in a particular format to the stock exchange within 60 days as per the the guidance note and the reporting requirement. Now what will be what will you provide in that annual disclosure? It's all mentioned here. General aspects is all those name and location. And so basically what they are saying is we want an annual report. Just as the for-profit enterprises have to give an annual report, please give to us an annual report. What will get covered is general aspects and governance aspects and financial aspects. Okay. Auditor's report. Now, if they are asking, this 60 days is something which is very aggressive. So it always keeps on getting shifted, but doesn't matter. This is what the regulations are saying. Fund utilization certificate, budget and budget utilization details. Some of the small organizations don't even do a formal budget. So what the disclosure requirements is trying to do is to bring discipline in the way we conduct our business. NPOs are in business, in social business. They are in the, unless they start thinking the language of business, they will not be able to survive the way changes are happening. It's something that I want to caution. So this is the annual disclosure by NPOs. What else is the disclosure? The disclosure by FPs is for the securities listed as per LODR. So we are not getting into too much on the for-profit enterprises, but since we are not for profit, the first thing is annual disclosure. The second is a material events policy. Now, disclosure of material events means anything which is a material event which affects your organization. So you will have to frame a materiality policy. Okay. Uh, Materiality policy means this particular event, this policy will say these particular events will affect us materially. And this, if there is a material event, this is how we are going to counter that material event and not allow our organization to go under. So there'll be a designated key person for determining material events. So the CEO or whosoever, any event has it occurred within the materiality policy, which is a material event. Reporting of the material event to social stock exchange within 7 days. So if there is a material event that has occurred within 7 days, and you'll have to keep updating them on that material event and also disclose on the website. Now, this is such an important thing. Can we think about material events that will affect us in time and take action? It's the social stock exchange which is actually telling you. This is something for a for-profit enterprise, the first lesson that is taught to the person. Anything material, please start raising your hand and your leg and your everything. Here we don't even have a thinking about what is a material event. The other day I was talking to somebody and I said, you have people in the board, you have people in the management, you have relatives, you have blood relatives, all of them are, where is the arm's length relationship? So they start talking anything. Then I said, will you mind having a conflict of interest policy? Says, why should we have a conflict of interest policy? Then I said, the conflict of interest policy only justifies all these relationships. It's not a policy which is, against you. It provides for a framework within which conflict of interest needs to be managed. Similarly, here, the materiality policy is management of such material events which can affect your organization very dramatically. And the social stock exchange is concerned about it. So the social stock exchange doesn't want to work with people who have no idea of, when an organization may just collapse. They don't want to work like this because No donors, no investors would like to work like this. The reputation of the social stock exchange will just go to zero the moment these kind of things happen. And therefore, these 87 organizations that are listed, that are registered, please remember, they have not just been registered. We made an application and it got registered. 4 to 6 weeks it takes, lot of data, and sometimes it's also rejected. So that is what I'm saying. It's not something which is cakewalk. So the materiality is something that has to be reported. Then there is another reporting, which is the social impact report. Now you'll start saying, अरे ये सब registration के बाद कौन करेगा? जब आप करोगे जब ही आपको स्टॉक एक्सचेंज से पैसे का पॉसिबिलिटी होगा. In fact, the social audit report will give you lot of mileage in terms of other donors also, because they will say, well, this organization considers quantifying social impact and measuring social impact. That metrics is there in their head. At least they are started thinking. So those who are registered on the social stock exchange will have to also submit an social impact annual impact report, which is audited by the social auditor. We have talked about the social auditor. So there is a social audit firm who can be a firm, and they should employ social auditors. Not very difficult. Social auditors is quite easy. Even you can become a social auditor if you qualify the eligibility norms, and you can be associated with a social audit firm which is registered with the institute. Okay, not the ICAI, the Institute of Social Auditors of India. Not very difficult. Right now, it is easy within 90 days of close of the financial year. So if you're registered, you will have to, give the annual impact report for your organization. If you are listed, then you will also have to give the annual impact report for that project. Now, qualitative and quantitative aspects of social impact will be captured, okay, for which the funds have been raised. If NPOs only registered disclose significant activities, so it will be more generic at the organizational level. If you have not raised funds, if you have raised funds, then against the commitment that you made in your fundraising document, what have you achieved is what the social auditor will, observe and qualify. For social impact fund, the AIR will capture the impact for all the social enterprises funded. If it's a social impact fund, we will see the social impact fund as one of the last slides. AIR will cover all this. So what is the strategic intent? Okay. What is the approach? What is the impact scorecard? Okay. Containing all these on the scorecard. Now, please remember, this is not a headache. The annual impact report, if you send it even to a donor saying this is my social impact annual impact report along with my annual financial statement, if both of them go, they actually are collaborating or ensuring that you have better chance of getting funds. Okay. The next thing is, if you have, so these are all disclosures that I'm talking about. ये सब आपको disclose करना है, is what I'm actually saying. If you are thinking long term, if you are thinking long term in terms of your organization or other organizations where you might want to work or support, this is one of the avenues which will become a major focus in the next 10 years. So I'm not teaching you this from the point of view of today, but if you have to start applying your mind today, this is the right point. Then if you have raised funds, then the statement of utilization funds has to be provided within 45 days for each quarter after close of each quarter. So quarterly statement of utilization has to be provided till the funds are exhausted and their objectives have been completed. Now, the disclosure will say how much funds were raised, how much have been utilized, and how much are unutilized. Now, this will be available on the social stock exchange. So imagine a person who has even contributed 1,000 rupees at the project level can see what has happened, how much money has been utilized. Although he's put only 1,000 rupees, nothing. He's not put 1 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees. And if the project has raised 1 crore rupees, then even the person who has put 1,000 rupees in 1 crore can see all this, is what I'm trying to say. So see the kind of confidence that not that investor will tell 100 more. So the x times, the 100x time, the 1000x time, 1 lakh x time is what is going to create the democracy of investors. Now, moving on to, oh, where are we? Now I come to the self-regulatory organization clearly, quickly. So what has happened is that the Institute of Social Auditors of India has been, formed by the ICI. It's a separate institute within ICI, and it's basically the self-regulatory organization for the social stock exchange. Similarly, the ICAI and the ICMA. Now, the enrollment and regulation of the social auditors is what their responsibilities are. So, empanelment, registration, laying down, the standards, code of conduct, all of this. The so one is, how do you have social auditors? Second is, what are the standards that have to be followed, and what is the code of conduct that needs to be done professionally? Is what the Institute of Social Auditors is doing. The social auditor is basically an individual. Please remember, but they will have to be associated with a social audit firm. I have defined what it is as a social auditor. I'm not getting into too much detail. Uh, Basically, is registered with a self-regulatory organization, after clearing a test by the NIMS, the National Institute of NISM of Securities Market, and holds a valid certificate. Just as you want to be a distributor in the mutual fund, or you want to be a practitioner with the ICI, you need to get a certification. And then the social audit standards have been framed, what I call it as SAS. Now the SAS is the social audit standards that will have to be followed for impact evaluation or social impact assessment. They call it social impact assessment. Okay, they don't call it audit, they say assessment. Okay, so if you see all the 16 activities that are there is a standard, and on the right hand side I have said what is the SDG that it is hitting, what is the SDG that it is serving. So you have SDS 100, 200, and it will go up to 1600. That's the last. The 1600 is the last, promoting welfare of migrants. Okay. Now, reduced inequalities is the SDG goal. So for every activity for which you have raised money and you have proven social impact, the audit standard has been laid down, and substandards within the audit standard has been made. So interesting. Now, what you're saying is, we do audits. Can we do social audits? Yes, you can do social audit. And social audit helps you to be a better professional, because you can see not only the finance bit but also the program bit in terms of delivery. And when you put both of them together, the integration can result in much better understanding. So this is what it is. Now I come to the last slide, which is the AIF regulation. Now this is something which you need to understand. Now, what is an alternative investment fund? The alternative investment fund is a fund which provides a lump sum. It's like something like a mutual fund. Okay, if you can just look at it like this. Now, there are the AIF is regulations lay down how an alternative investment fund will be set up. Now, as far as social sector is concerned, the AIF regulation was changed, and the AIF, the social in this area, is what is called as the social impact fund. So, in our language for the social stock exchange, the AIF is the social impact fund. Now, the social impact fund can also raise monies. So mutual funds, they sell units. So the social impact funds can also sell social units through the schemes to garner investment using the social stock exchange. Okay. And can use that fund. So the social impact fund will raise the monies in bigger chunks, and they can be for broader social impact. So you have a scheme for poverty alleviation and you say we will raise monies through sale of social units for poverty alleviation in general, and this is what is our, that is our scheme, and the money that will get collected through that scheme will be invested in social enterprises registered on the social stock exchange. So suppose I am a social, as I'm a social enterprise listed on, registered on the social stock exchange as an NPO, but I don't want to list. I don't want to come out with the public issue. Can the money that the social impact fund raises through the scheme be invested in my private placement instrument, the of ZCZP? The answer is yes. So if I can talk to the SIF and say, well, I work in this area and I need money, I can place, make a private placement or ZCZP, but not a public issue. Will you give the monies that you have mobilized through the social units that you have sold for this particular scheme? The answer is yes. That's another way of raising money by just being registered and not coming out with a public issue. Each scheme has a minimum, as I said, the minimum corpus is 5 crores. So if you come out with a scheme as a social impact fund, just like a mutual fund, for raising capital by way of sales of social units, and again, the social units doesn't have a return requirement, because the social units is delivering social outcomes. They are not delivering monetary outcomes. They are not delivering profit. So each of these SIFs will have to come out with a, each scheme will have a minimum corpus, minimum size of 5 crores, and the minimum investment by individuals is 2 lakh rupees, as was the case earlier for ZCZP. Now SIFs have to invest minimum 75% of their investable funds in unlisted securities, meaning private placement by me as a registered NPO. So if I've collected 5 crores, then 3 crores 75 lakhs has to be in unlisted securities. So I have 100 NPOs who are registered and they want to raise monies for their projects. They don't need to come to the public issue, but they can be, they can, their social impact fund can subscribe to their private placement of ZCZP. That's another alternative. Now, this can be both registered or listed. So if you have a public issue, also the money can be invested in the public issue of that NPO. So if you don't want to come out with a public issue, then you make a private placement of ZCZP. If you want, the SIF can, who has raised money under a particular scheme, and your particular project is in line with the scheme that for which the money has been raised, they can invest in your public issue of ZCZP also. This is what is the alternative IIF regulations. We still have to see movement on the social impact fund or ISIF at this stage. Other miscellaneous provision. So the government has set up a capacity building fund of rupees 100 crores. So they are now going all over the country for webinars, seminars for popularizing the social stock exchange. It's with NABARD and SIDBI. The governing council of the social stock exchange, which is the management committee, has been set up. Various tax benefits and incentives are being worked out. For instance, the 80G benefit initially was not available. That has been given. Whether we know that foreign money cannot come as of now. We know that CSR money cannot come as of now, but there are those discussions that are happening. How do we make the instrument sweet for the investor so that they come directly to the market and don't, and can invest even small amounts in deserving projects? The consequential changes in laws is happening. They've still not been formalized. Only the 80G benefit has been given. That too also some couple of months back. Okay. So initial public issues of ZCZP didn't even have a 80G benefit. And people started saying, if I can't get 80G benefit, why should I not donate directly? Why should I buy a ZCZP? But that provision has been introduced. The government is thinking of even increasing the 80G benefit to 100% instead of 50%, like the 80GGA. All right. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. This is a very new topic, so I don't expect many questions, but I expect you to chew this. I expect you to look at it. I expect it to look at this opportunity in the next 1 decade. This will become a reality, and social work or social development work is a business as an enterprise. I let me not business enterprise rather I should call it. Okay, so it's becoming an enterprise rather than just process. Now there's a question, one question only, whether NGOs should be Section 8 company only. No, it can be a trust, a society, as I had already mentioned. So it can be a trust, society, or a Section 8 company for registration, and any of these once registered can list on SSE. It's not that only Section 8 can list. Once you are registered, you can list whether you are a trust, society, or a Section 8. NGOs for operational purpose require funds every year recurring for them. How does this work? So what happens is that at this particular point of time, the money that you can raise from stock exchanges is essentially for project implementation. But for operations, you can have a small bit of it, but not too much. You cannot say that the money that I'm raising is for my operational purposes. The monies that you will raise will be for one of the 16 activities, but you may have program implementation cost as one component for which you can raise money. Or should we use these funds only for asset creation? Asset creation can be a part of the project, which is not useful for all types of our activities. So I don't understand what is all type of activities, but what I'm saying is that if your project has capital expenditure and revenue expenditure, both can be funded through the fundraising document for raising of ZCZP. But the ZCZP generally is being permitted when it is for a project, okay, for a specified project, just like CSR at this point of time. But when you implement project or when you conceive a project, there could be some amount of management cost which can be included, which will be part of it, including raising fundraising cost also, which is something that is permitted. So that's the only question that I have. But if people have more questions, uh, you can unmute and ask questions. This is a one-way session today more because I want to clarify your understanding of the intricacies and the nuts and bolts of the social stock exchange. I hope I've been able to clarify this, but I will request you to read and listen to this once more before you are able to understand where the securities law is taking us, the not-for-profit organizations, to. Please remember, this is hardly 2 years. It's like, 12 years for CSR, we are still looking at certain things. This is only 2 years old. But please remember, the avenue for social development funding or capital is more enterprise oriented than only philanthropy oriented, is something that I'm saying. And the DIB that I talked to you, and please try to understand that more, is purely a risk return instrument in the social sector space. So that is the kind of shift, very major paradigm shift that is happening in this sector, and we need to understand it from the legal perspective. I am not saying tomorrow you start talking to people and saying I am coming out with ZCZP, but the kind of shift that is happening in the sector in terms of how funding can be raised and how the thought process of programming has to be there is something which organizations will have to quickly learn if they have to succeed. Otherwise, others will succeed and you may not succeed. And the CSR, the taking the markets, the social markets to the masses, all that is clearly communicating that message. So if there are questions, you may ask. Otherwise, we can close. The next session will be social security laws. Okay. And this is another area where there is complete denial by the not-for-profit organization. And it's going to become a major, major existential risk, or a penal provisions coming in will actually sweep out whatever little monies we have in our pocket, in our general funds. if we do not start, looking at it, because everything there also is becoming online. You just cannot fool the government now. This is something that I want to say. So since everything is faceless, everything is online, and and portals, government portals are, migrating with data analytics, very great data analytics abilities. It will not become very difficult for AI and for, their data analytics tools to be able to actually get the full picture of your organization from all the portals and see where you are coming. Gone are the days when, nobody was able to actually, because of the sheer size, not manage. Now everything is very easy. But please remember, NPOs are now under the securities law, and that's why I've called it the securities law for NPOs, just like social security laws. So that's the kind of tectonic shift that is happening in this sector. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you next week, the same time, same day, next Friday. Thank you very much.